Welcome to the Taking the Leap podcast, where you can learn how to launch your full-time career in this part-time gig economy. No matter what career you're in, you have the potential to be the best version of you and overcome whatever obstacles stand in your way. And now, here's your host, the CEO of Bonvera, Bob Dickey.
Welcome back, guys. We are coming to you from Wichita, Kansas. This has been a crazy day. I literally started the day at 4 a.m. in the morning, driving down to Atlanta, Georgia, hanging out with my YPO forum, drove back to Knoxville, Tennessee, caught a flight all the way out here to Wichita, Kansas. Going to be spending a couple of days here in the local area with some friends, and we've got an event this weekend. And my good friend Cody Newton is about ready to catch a plane tomorrow morning and fly to Michigan. And we are figuring out a way at about 11:30 at night to have a conversation. We're like, you are not leaving Wichita without us recording this podcast interview. It's been one I've been wanting to get on the books with you for quite some time. So thank you for taking some time and spending a little bit of time with us. For those of you who are listening and don't know who Cody is, let me give you a brief introduction. So not only is Cody a good friend of mine, a serial entrepreneur, having been either a part owner or full owner of over 20 different companies in his career. He's also co-owner and co-founder of Bonvera, a company which I am currently working with and leading. And it's my pride and joy to be able to link arms with Cody and serve alongside of him. I have absolutely really enjoyed, I think, Cody, not only spending time with you and seeing how you think and how you process, but just becoming friends with you and getting to know a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey. You know, there's a couple of things that I want to tease out through this interview. You did something that was really, I think, unique in the fact that it is now kind of in vogue for young people to not go to college. And, you know, Peter Thiel had that famous competition where he told people who were in college and say, hey, if you want to start a business, I'll seed you $100,000 if you drop out of college, and I'll help you start your business. It's now become in vogue for people to do this. Here you are about 20, 25 years ago. You go to Kansas State.
Yes.
You spend
the Wildcats.
You spend 3 weeks on campus.
3 tough weeks, Bob.
3 tough weeks.
3 tough weeks.
And you said, hold my beer, watch this.
I did.
I quit, right? And then you go out and you start your entrepreneurial journey. And in that journey has been really amazing. You've been a successful entrepreneur. You've had, as we just stated, been involved in 20 plus different businesses, from construction to ice cream to internet retail to direct sales. Did you have some type of different mentoring, or what caused you at that young age to say, you know what, I think I can do better on my own?
Yeah, it was crazy, and I appreciate it. And we're glad to have you here in Kansas, Bob. This is gonna be fun to have you here with some of our team that's around here. You know, I don't know what it was. I think at an early age, I started realizing that I had bigger things I want to accomplish than just what I could get from a traditional 9-to-5. Not that there's anything wrong with a 9-to-5. Right. I just my butt felt like it was always burning, and I wanted to do more. And so I went to college for 3 weeks, and it was the 3 toughest weeks of my life. And I took 2 classes. How much
studying did you get done really in 3 weeks?
Here's why I quit. I really quit because I took speech and economics. I was going to get business because I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur.
Yep.
My dad told me since I was a kid, Newtons don't work for anybody.
You want to be your own boss.
I was going to be my own boss. And I started my first entrepreneurship when I was 14, cutting wood, having a John Deere 4020 tractor, a 1977 Ford F-250. And so I went to college just because all my friends did. And I thought I'll take business. And my first microeconomics class, I studied for 6 hours. 6 hours, which I had never studied for 6 hours, ever. And I got a 24%.
For a quiz or a test?
Our first test. And my teacher sat me down the next day and said, you're never going to make it up because you flunked the quiz. Now you flunked our first big test. And I thought, I studied for 6 hours, and this probably just isn't for me. And so I ended up flunking my speech class, too, because my speech teacher said, you're one of the worst speakers we've ever had come through here.
That is so funny because you're probably one of the best public speakers that I know. And that's not just hyperbole and just being nice, but you are very polished, very accomplished public speaker who gets asked to speak on large stages all over the country. So how did you go from flunking speech to being best in class?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd consider myself best in class.
Yeah, I do. So I'm an outsider, so I can say that about you.
Well, I appreciate that. But I don't know if I'm best in class today. You know, I think I used to speak and I tried to be a real formal speaker. I think when they brought me in there, they had certain things that they wanted me speak a certain way. Mm-hmm. And that's just not the way I run. That's not the way I can't format things that way. And so I think today, really what I try to do is I try to speak with my heart, and I try to just say things that try to add value to people and all that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't say I'm a great speaker today. I just say that if somebody's going to give me a topic that I care about and I'm passionate about, everybody will probably know I'm passionate about.
Well, that is certainly something that I think that I feel when you're on stage, when you're delivering a talk, you can tell that it is something that you're passionate about, and that it comes off very natural, as opposed to something that's very, I think, maybe forced or contrived. So I think I like the fact that you tap into your heart, into that emotion, and that's what the audience, so that's what I walk away from remembering and feeling. But tying that back to where we started with your educational journey, it is just kind of interesting that, so you go off to school to study economics and speech. You fail out of both of them, yet you've been in a very successful entrepreneur, been your own boss, self-taught in terms of being a great public speaker. Tell us, tease out that journey. I mean, it's just so you were passionate about it from day one, and you just, how did you on that pathway over the last 20, how many years is it? 20 years, 25 years?
So I started my first, as far as my entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah.
So my first entrepreneurship was cutting wood. Mm-hmm. And I used to cut, if people on here are listening and they've ever cut wood, you cut ricks and you cut cords. Mm-hmm. A rick is a 4 foot by 8 foot bit of wood, and a cord is 16 foot by 4 foot. So I would cut hedge wood. If anybody knows what hedge is, it's a really hard wood. It pops a lot. Mm. And I started that journey, and then I did that, and then I started a lawn care company like many people do, that enter into entrepreneurship. Cutting grass is a great way to enter.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you learn how to get business, how to, payroll, taxes, all that kind of stuff. And it would be my senior year in high school, and my teacher said, "Cody, you weren't meant for school." She said, "You're really not very good at school." And she was my friend. I mean, I liked her. She was my high school counselor. She was my neighbor even. And she said, "Cody, I like you. Like, I like hanging out with you. I want you in class, but you're just not the educated type person." But she said, "You do really good in VOAG, and you do really good in woods, and there's a place in town hiring called Heston Concrete." So I ended up going to work for Heston Concrete, and I did what they called CVEP, which was you go to school half a day and go to work half the day. So I got up at 7 a.m. in the morning. I poured concrete till 11, and then I went to school from 11 to 3, and then I played football and basketball and tennis. And so right after that, all my friends are going to college. I'm like, I'm going to go to college with them, And I really went to college. I actually stayed. To be honest, I stayed at K-State for 2 years just to make sure I got the experience.
Okay. So you were like, isn't there a movie about that? Like someone who goes to college and just hangs out and doesn't go to class. You just go to all the parties. So was that you?
That was it. I mean, yes, I was preparing for the next party.
Okay.
So everybody else went to school while I was preparing.
Okay.
But anyways, I ended up coming back, and because I knew concrete, I ended up coming back and starting a concrete company, and that was kind of the beginning of more of a higher level entrepreneurial journey. And that was, I would have been 21 at that time. So I started that, and then we ended up going from that into, it was a crazy story. I had there was a guy named Meadowlark Lemon, and I don't know if anybody's ever heard of Meadowlark Lemon. He was on the Harlem Globetrotters. For people my age, Bob, I'm 39, and my age, they remember Scooby-Doo.
Yep.
And on Scooby-Doo, the Harlem Globetrotters used to be on Scooby-Doo.
I remember that, yeah.
And Meadowlark Lemon was one of the guys that was on Scooby-Doo at the Harlem Globetrotters. So I had a friend who told me that he's coming in town and bringing some local business people together to invest.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, man, this is going to be my chance to become even a bigger entrepreneur and go big for something. And so that started a journey of getting into the arena football and starting buying into arena football teams. And so we ended up buying the Tennessee Thundercats in Knoxville, Tennessee. They played it. So this would have been, man, I'm 39, so this would have been 17 years ago, something like that.
Yeah, what years? Because I was at Tennessee, in Knoxville, Tennessee, from 93 to 98. Were those the years that you were?
No, it would have been 2000.
Okay.
Is when that
so
started.
You bought it right after I left.
I bought it right after you left because they said, man, everybody's going to Tennessee games. So can you imagine what's going to happen with an arena football team in Knoxville? And that was a good learning experience as Meadowlark Lemon's son then ended up running that business.
Did it not transition from, because I mean, back in the day, those were right after Peyton Manning left, right? We were top 10 program. We won the national championship in 98. So it is a football town at that time. Did it transition? I mean, it was a parallel business right there in Knoxville. So did those numbers from Neyland Stadium transition into arena football?
Well, I'd say they did. We actually won the national championship in arena football our first year against the Omaha Beef.
Did you?
So it was an amazing year.
Instant success.
Instant success on the football field.
Okay.
In the financial side, I learned a valuable lesson.
Okay, I want to hear this. What's this lesson?
Well, I think the lesson for me is don't ever spend time or invest your money into something you're not going to pay attention to. We invested hoping that somebody's paying attention, and we basically found out that no one was really paying attention to the bottom line. And so we took that, and we took the after our second year, I believe.
So you're a passive investor in this.
I was a passive investor. I mean, I tried to pretend. I mean, I was 22, so I was taking my buddies to the national championship, sitting in nice seats and pretending like we were like, I don't know, that Al guy or whatever from the Raiders.
Al
Davis, you know. I mean, those were probably the visions I had. But I ended up after a couple years of that one wasn't making very much money. So we thought we would bring it to Kansas, and then we started 2 arena football teams, one in Wichita and one in Topeka, Kansas. So we actually had 3 arena football teams, and then ended up buying the league, the IPFL, Indo Professional Football League, after that. And there's 12 of us involved in that. So I went from that. I had that, and then that typical construction lifestyle. I went into real estate and started buying duplexes with, my brother-in-law and I bought some duplexes. I personally bought some duplexes. And then a leasing company called Cody Leasing. It was brilliant, Cody and Tara leasing. So we had that, and I think we leased 23 full duplexes, 46 units. It's just been a crazy journey. I mean, that was kind of the beginning ones. I can't even remember all of them, but that was the first 5
you
or
started
6.
off, like, it sounds like with the sweat equity, right? The muscle entrepreneur getting out there. It's like, I'm going to be the guy cutting the wood, mowing the yard, laying the concrete, and then slowly started getting into passive investments, being an entrepreneur in the investment side, and then into real estate. And so somewhere along the way, you're either reading books or someone's mentoring you about, it would appear, the value of leverage and how you can be a one-man show, or if you're wanting to scale up, you're going to have to leverage a little better, right? How did you transition? Because, I mean, it's obviously a big transition from where you started to where you are today.
Well, I think that I was blessed. I mean, if I had anything, I grew up pretty poor. I grew up in a pretty poor family for a lot of years until I was probably in high school. But when I was 7, I'd been 7 or 8. I think I would have been 8, actually. My dad started an entrepreneurial journey. And with his entrepreneurial journey took a lot of self-education. And he'd start listening to audios. Back then it was tapes. Tell you how poor we were. I was 8 years old, and my dad said, if you want to play baseball, you got to pay for it. And I go and play. I think I maybe paid $15 or something like that. And I don't even know how I made the money to get there. But then I go to the coach. He says, "Well, the first game, everybody has to have a cup." So I'm 8 years old. I had just spent my $15 to be on the team.
Was that 16 ounce, 8 ounce? Oh no, you're not talking a drinking.
36 ounce.
Oh, you're not talking a drinking cup. You're talking about a cup.
Yeah.
Gotcha, sports cup.
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
Okay.
Right. It was yes.
Okay, I just make clear. Cody's blushing. I'm just clarifying.
49.1 ounce.
Okay. All right. So you had to have a cup, and you had to go get it.
No. So what happened? I didn't have any money, but so I used my dad's. It used to be on cassette tapes. They would have plastic covers.
Okay.
It was almost like a glass. They would bust real easy, and I put it there.
You took a cassette tape and put it down your pants as your cup.
That was my cup because our coach would then come by and he'd make us all knock.
Oh my
so
God.
I was using my dad's.
You could not do this. Can you imagine doing this today? Some guy going down the line and like, I got to knock. This is the stuff that happened like 20 years ago that you could never do today.
Right. He had to hear it. It had to echo,
Hey guys, I got to knock. I can't even imagine this. All right. So, and he would hit
that was a side story,
but he would hit your cup and it was a cassette tape and he'd feel.
He'd hear it. Right. So anyways, it was the beginning. My dad started an entrepreneurial journey when I think I was 8 years old, and he'd listen to audios and read books and stuff like that. And I would listen to them, even though I didn't want to listen to them. I'd always try to tell my dad, I'll listen to the radio. Turn on the radio. Dad, turn on the TV. And he never would, because when he decided to be an entrepreneurial, he was fully committed.
Yep.
He was in a spot where he didn't have a choice. And so I would in the background, I would hear it all the time. And so it always stayed with me. As you get older, you rebel for a while, and then you end up turning back to the ways in which you were taught.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And so that's what I did. I ended up being, I was probably 25 years old, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to start going after that residual income at that age because of the audios and the books that I had heard my dad listen to. So
what's interesting, I literally just heard a podcast recently. It was Tim Ferriss was interviewing Seth Godin. You're familiar with Seth Godin?
Oh yeah.
So Tim was asking Seth all the successes that you've had. You've written all these, New York Times best-selling books. I mean, you're a highly sought-after speaker. I mean, where did you get your start? Where did you get your journey? And he recounts becoming friends with Zig Ziglar, and he says, he takes a moment of pause. It's like this pregnant pause on the podcast. He said, guys, anyone who's listening, and he lists 2 Zig Ziglar audio series. He said, you have to go out and get this. It's the number one thing that changed my thinking and helped me, changed the way I view the world. It's the best. And then he goes to their old cassette tapes, and he talks about his friendship with Zig Ziglar. So I would imagine that with knowing your dad, knowing the educational background, that you probably have listened to the exact same Zig Ziglar.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah. Zig Ziglar, Les Brown, Paul Zane Pilzer, Stephen Covey,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of that kind of stuff. And then a lot of specific for his industry as well.
So you drop out of college, you have a teacher that says you're not. Did she say you're not made for education? Did I hear you?
My high school counselor said you're not meant for that. Her exact words were, "You're a horrible student, but I like you."
Right.
That was really what she said.
And so you drop out of the formal education,
Yeah,
and you move into self-education,
You
and you're leveraging all the stuff that you saw your dad doing,
right.
all the various audios and so forth. The same thing that not Stephen Covey, but Seth Godin was talking about, reading all sorts of books. I mean, one of the things I'm impressed with you is that you are a voracious reader. I mean, anytime that you and I are getting together, you're letting me know, hey, I'm reading this. This is a book, Bob, that I'm really enjoying. And you'll ask me, hey, what are you reading? You're very interested in staying up to date and
You bet.
and gleaning that. So how I guess, tell us a little bit about your that educational journey. So outside of that stuff that you were getting from your dad was putting those tapes in the car. You're listening to that.
You bet.
And what's the rest of the story?
Well, I never really liked I'll just be honest. I wasn't a reader. I didn't even really like self-education. I somewhat rebelled from it because I'd hear it all in the house, and I wanted to watch stinking TV,
Scooby-Doo.
I wanted to watch Scooby-Doo and listen to the radio, and he was doing those, listen to Zig Ziglar audios and all that. So I was probably, probably 23, 24 before I started to read, and I wasn't a proficient reader at the beginning. I would maybe read a book every 4 months, maybe, and I would be bored to death with it.
Mm-hmm.
But once I got to the point where I really had a passion to become better, and a passion to serve, and a passion for a greater purpose, then I started realizing how important reading was, and I would grab anything I could to get better, So, and I think having kids helped that out. And, with my walk with faith, and has been because I kind of started with faith books, to be honest. I was searching, and that love of finding about my faith, and ended up turning to books of all kinds of stuff, right? I mean, now from economics to personal development to finance to economics, all those kinds of things.
One of the things that I found in my journey, I remember back, I was in the military. I was catching a flight from stateside over to Germany for a TDY. I was going through.
What does TDY mean?
It's a temporary duty assignment.
Okay.
And I was going to be over there for a few weeks. And I remember walking through the airport, I believe it was in Atlanta, and I was in one of those like little book kiosks. I'm just like, I got to find something that I'm going to read while I'm on this, long flight. And I happened to see a book that triggered my interest. It was the title of it, Skunk Works, right? It's the making of the stealth fighter.
Wow.
And how it was super, super top secret. I remember pulling that thing off. I'm like, I'll give it a go. And I got on the plane, and I could not put that book down. It just absolutely captivated me. And it was something that I was living at the moment, right? So I'm an Air Force officer, and I find myself in these pages, out in California, Lockheed Martin, and I'm reading all this, and these are the things that I'm experiencing. And so it just triggered a deep desire for me to like, man, this is unbelievable. And I started cherry picking just books that I was interested in. And then slowly over time, that appetite for, continuous education, continuous knowledge, that's how I stirred it in myself. So I didn't necessarily pick out a business book. I mean, sometimes if someone hands me a book that I'm really not interested in, or it's not going to be applicable, I'm just like,
And that happens all the time, doesn't it?
Just like, I don't have, but when you find yourself wrapped in those pages, when you find that's something that you're interested in, or something even more important than this that you're going to be able to leverage in your life to make you a better leader, a better husband, a better father, a better, person within your community, it's an intoxicating environment once you get that triggered the right way.
You bet.
And so for those that are listening, they're like, I'm not a reader. I cannot believe how many people I meet in life, and I'll ask them, hey, what are you reading? Oh, I don't read. Or when's the last time you read a book? Most Americans, I forget the actual statistic, but it's a pretty high statistic. There's a lot of Americans that after they leave high school, never pick up a book and read another book again in their life. And I was shocked when I heard that. I'm like, so, because that is such an important part of my life. I know that it's a huge, important part of your life. I've never met somebody that I would consider extremely successful, that as you kind of peel back the layers of the onion and you start to ask questions, say, hey, tell me a little bit about your life. Tell me what you do, where you don't discover that person is a voracious reader.
Right.
I think it's a critical skill set.
Totally.
I mean, so for you on your journey, I noticed that's something. I just want to tease that out for the audience, that you didn't go the formal education route.
You're right.
But you went the self-education route, and reading was a very important component. And you have recommended a whole slew of great books to me that I've really, really enjoyed, that's impacted my life. So I just want to say thank you.
Yeah, you bet. And I think that for as far as me, and you've done the same for me. I mean, the last book that you had recommended for me about, not the last book, but one of the last ones was about the Captain book that you had recommended. What a great game changer book for me. It just came to me at the exact right time, exactly what I needed to hear. And so I appreciate that as well. And I think that that sometimes reading is not just for learning either. Reading is I think for mental health.
That's interesting. Tell me about how you see that.
Just, it's so easy to see to get caught up in your own funk, right? And by reading, you're actually living through somebody else's funk a lot of times, and it gives you perspective. And so I think reading, if I ever get in a spot where I'm down in the dumps or I'm wondering how to get through something or I'm a little anxious about it, I grab a book and I think through processes, try to think through it the way they think through it in that book. And it really has been mentally helpful in my mental health.
That's really interesting. Now that I think about it, there's been multiple times where I have found myself in one of those funks where you're just like, just things don't seem to be working the way you want it to work. And then you pick up the right book and you just get supercharged and energized. It's almost like taking a wire brush to your mind, right? Where you just brush off that rust, right? You take a wire brush to an old rusty tool and you can kind of polish it up. And I think reading can very much be like that.
You bet.
So what are you reading right now? Speaking of reading.
Yeah, I'm reading right now. There's a new book out from John Maxwell called The Power of Five.
Oh, I've got that too. That's awesome.
And I'm most of the way through that book. I'm also reading, probably for my fifth or sixth time, How to Have Confidence and Power in Dealing with People. So I got those two books.
Why are you reading? You've read that thing five or six times. Why are you reading that again?
Well, I am going through it with a book study with some of our up-and-coming leaders in our company.
Okay.
And I knew the impact it had on me then. And I also know when you have a new frame on where you're at, that I like to take old information to even my new frame. And so what I did is instead of grabbing the same book I've read, I went ahead and left that book on the shelf and I grabbed a new book. And I just wanted to see it through the lens I have it today. And then I've looked back at how I looked at it when I read it 5 years ago, 7 years ago, 9 years ago. And so I'm gleaning things today that I never got out of it
You're
5 years ago.
Different life stage, right?
Yeah. Today I'd be more ready to be a captain and be in leadership. And then I was looking at it from kind of a more of a back seat.
One of the things that I enjoy doing, I've shared with friends that, if outside of taking my family out of the house, right? So if my home was burning, and I had to rescue one thing, all my family's gone. The most valuable asset in my home is my library.
Wow.
And one of the things because the thing that I can't replace is every single book that I have in my home, I can remember where I was when I bought it. I can remember the point of my life where I was. Because a lot of them were, when I was on a vacation or on a trip, or, these were books I read when I was in my 20s. Here's my 30s. But I am an individual that has to take notes within the margin. So every single one of those books is highlighted in notes all throughout. One of my favorite things to do is I might be home one time working from my home office, might be on a board meeting or a board call, and something will trigger. And I'm like, I remember reading about a particular case study, or this principle has application right now, and I can run out into my library. I can pull that book off and I can thumb through the pages and I can open up to that spot and see notes that I've jotted in the margin. And I actually, there'll be times like on a Friday night, this is going to sound crazy. But there will be times like on a Friday night or on a weekend, I don't want to go watch a movie. I don't want to go out. I like to just like in the house, just pull off books and just review, just start thumbing through, because it helps me. I can see like notes that I wrote when I was a young officer, right, in the Air Force, in the margins, or hey, one of my first jobs out of the Air Force in the private sector. I like to go back and see those types of things. Do you do something like that? Similar? Are you a note taker? Are you able to? Do you have a vast library at your house where you'll pull stuff off and how do you use the books that you have within your library?
Yeah, well, I tear up books. You don't ever want a book after me.
I saw that book, the captain class you have. I mean, that thing that looks like it went through Vietnam.
Oh yeah, I don't have any respect for keeping a book in proper order. Even my Bible. You go read my Bible, and the whole thing's written all over, and a lot of it's like, Cody, you suck at this.
No, you have to go to your house and show people what that Captain Class book looks like, because I think you told me I was like, what in the world happened to this thing? And I think that you said that you had been reading it while you were in the hot tub.
Yeah, I read in the hot tub every morning.
It looks like a worn out, soggy sponge.
Yeah, every morning. That's my ritual. If I don't get into a ritual, I won't read. So I have to ritualize so I get up in the morning, I grab a cup of Thrive coffee, I go into my bathroom, I have a hot tub in the corner, I sit in that hot tub, I turn it on, got little bubbles going on, little Barry Man, no, not Barry, no. But I go in there and I read for about an hour. So that's how I start my day every day.
Read for an hour in a hot tub. I like it. What you need to do is you put Epsom salts in there.
So my wife she puts essential oils in Epsom salts.
Because the Epsom salts makes your skin super smooth.
Oh, yes.
Very smooth.
Yes, I'm from Kansas, and I'm a farm kid, and so I'm a little embarrassed to share it, but I do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because if you have like a really bad, like I will do it for like a sore back or sore muscles.
Right.
But when I notice that the residual.
But you go to an Ivy League college.
But
you go to Harvard, so it's a lot different than.
Yeah, we soak in Epsom soaked baths.
Every day is cardigans and Epsom salt.
No, Ixnay on the Epsom salts.
Okay, just the cardigans.
Yeah, that's just the cardigans. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, okay. Speaking of, let's do a hard pivot off of the Epsom salts. What periodicals? Are there any periodicals or any like newspapers or journals, or is it just books? Is there anything else that you?
Yeah, YouTube.
Really?
YouTube's a huge part of my. So it's not. At nights when I YouTube. So the morning I read, at night I'll YouTube. If I can't sleep, or I would bet 3 nights a week, I stay up for 2 hours after. I mean, we have 5 kids, so I put them to bed and I get on YouTube and I will watch either something in the political realm, maybe a Ben Shapiro. I watch Ben Shapiro quite often. Patterson. There's just a lot of people that I'll go listen to.
TED Talks. You like that?
I do go to TED Talks some.
Okay.
Sometimes they're not. I kind of like the debate format.
Oh, you like okay.
So I listen to. So I might even do something on theology about baptism or whatever, and I'll watch baptism debate, and I'll watch a 2-hour long.
I don't know if I've ever met anybody who said that they liked it late at night. They want to go and listen to a podcast or a video on baptism debate. So you like to see point counterpoint, hear how people are arguing their position on a whole host of random subjects.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I sent you one the other night after I got done doing it with Kobe Bryant was being interviewed.
Yep.
And I think it's Valuetainment, I think is what it was, on YouTube. And so that's kind of how I get my info. And then I do sometimes read the Wichita Business Journal, but I wouldn't say I'm an avid periodicals reader.
Okay.
Mostly videos and books.
Okay. When was the last time you cried?
I cry quite often.
Do you?
Oh yeah, I don't.
Do you find it cathartic?
I don't know what cathartic means. So
is it a release? Is it you find? I know some people that feel like they need to do it on a regular basis as just kind of like part of a healthy release.
I don't think of it that way.
Okay, so tell me about it.
I think I'm just passionate about some things, and I try to keep myself in those things I'm passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm passionate about helping boys become men. And I'm passionate about, my faith. I'm passionate about my entrepreneurial journey. And I think that everything I
So you cry about the things that you're passionate about?
Oh, I do. I wear I sometimes wear it on my sleeve, and it can be a good thing and it can be a bad thing, but I try not to numb it, because when you numb the pain, you numb the joy.
Oh, I love that.
That's why I'm not worried about it, I'll cry. So whatever. If you don't like it, I'll punch you.
Well, I know you will. It's actually one of the stories I want to bring up, because you did knock somebody out earlier in your career. So you're very sensitive. You're a sensitive guy. But if somebody says something bad about your sister, you'll walk into a bar and cold clock them and knock them out, which I love that about you.
Yeah, that's a
true statement, right? That happened.
Yep. charged me with the battery, but I only got a misdemeanor.
That's good.
Because the judge said, "You mean he actually hit you?" And I said, "Yeah." So
Good
the
on
judge
you.
felt bad for it. He didn't even want to give me a misdemeanor, but
Right.
because it wasn't my fault.
Well, sometimes you got to do the right thing.
Yeah, I'd do it again.
That's right. So let's go back to your sensitive side. So so now that everybody knows that,
turn down the lights.
now that everybody knows that, Cody is the prototypical, tough Kansas guy, right? But I like the fact that you are secure enough to wear your emotions on your sleeve and allow people to see it. I think one of the things that I appreciate about people who live life like that, I think life is better when you're able to enjoy it in the extremes. And there's a certain type of person that doesn't want to show any emotion, any highs, any lows. It's just kind of like right down the middle. And I don't know how to live life that way, because life is a series of ups and downs. It's, as I'm a father of 6, I've lived long enough now to experience, the highest of highs, and I've also experienced some of the lowest of lows. And I like to be around people where I feel like I can be myself and open up and, share those emotions and the things that I'm going through. And I think it's a healthy way to live life. And so that's something that I appreciate about you when you say, "Hey, look, this is who I am." And there's been times in my life where I was like, you know what, I'm not going to have a conversation on this. I'm not going to share this with friends because it might be a little bit emotional. But then when I do, it's an empowering experience. And I think it also opens you up. I think when you live life that way, when you're transparent and you're able to talk about the things that you're going through, and be honest with people, it's something that enables you to connect. And that's one of the things I would say about you that I've noticed about you is that you are an incredible connector. It was interesting for me that you were reading that book again, how to have power and influence in dealing with people. What was the title?
Confidence and power to deal with people.
Yeah. Because I think that you're a natural connector, and I was like, that's not an area that I see that you need, help in, but you're going back to the well to get stronger and to get better. And do you think that your ability to lead a large team and to connect with a lot of people is somewhat tied to you said earlier that you wear your emotions on your sleeve and that you allow your emotions to be seen? Do you think that helps?
I don't know. I think that there could be a downside to that because, you watch people that they go through this emotional roller coaster and people don't know who they are one day from the next.
Oh yeah, that's the extremes, like up and down, up and
down. And I think that that roller coaster, no one wants to go on your roller coaster, right? But I think it's good when, one of the things I can't help, but when somebody's hurt for them.
Mm-hmm.
I just can't. I don't know how.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I try not to numb that. And so I think as a leader, I think that putting yourself, and Bob, I've watched you do this multiple times. You put yourself in their position and you think through it from their position. And I think that has been an asset in my entrepreneurial journey is because I think about it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just because
being able to connect with people,
just being able to feel what they're feeling at the time and thinking about it and then thinking about how they're probably processing it and somewhat feeling that at the same time they do.
So would you say that empathy as an entrepreneur is a key skill or a superpower in some respects?
Yeah, I think if there's that's one area that that can develop a leader that will have stickability inside their business or inside their family even.
Okay.
So.
Let me give you a couple of rapid fire questions.
Okay.
What is an exotic place that's on your bucket list to go some place that you want to go that you haven't been?
I'd like to go to the BVI. I'd like to go get in a boat and I'd like to go to all the different islands. I actually told Tara, I said, I'd love to rent a yacht. Now I'm a control freak, And I'm not one of those guys that likes to sit in the back. Don't stick me in a limo in the back when some punk's up there driving that doesn't know how to drive.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be driving. I want to, so I want to rent a yacht in the BVI, and I want to go from island to island trying new drinks, new food at all the different islands. And that's something I've never done. We've been to Hawaii a bunch of times and a lot of different, and I love Hawaii too. But that's a bucket list one. That's probably number one.
I think that one's going to happen real soon.
Yes, that's no doubt.
What's one of your favorite places to go?
The lake.
Like?
Yeah. I mean, I love to fish. I'm a wakeboarder. Even though I'm 39, I like to wakeboard.
You haven't blown out any knees yet?
I've never blown out any knees, but I love to wakeboard. I love to tube. Love to pull the kids. When I'm at a lake, man, everything's going to be all right?
That's good. Most important skill for an entrepreneur. You've been an entrepreneur for many years, been in business, many different businesses. You've seen a lot of different things. If you're someone who's listening, what's the number one skill, Cody, that I need to have to be a successful entrepreneur? What is it?
I tweeted this the other day, and I think it's the beginning of everything. It's you've got to do it scared before you do it skilled. And that's...
Oh, I love that.
You have to do it scared first. And
you got to be willing to take the leap and do it scared.
You got to be. So when I started my last entrepreneurial journey that I wanted to create my masterpiece in, and that's developing teams of people, I would sweat profusely, and I would have to sit 5-6 houses away because I was going to go meet somebody to do a presentation. I'd have to sit 5 or 6 houses away and pray, and I'd sweat, and I'd have anxiety, and I'd start hyperventilating. And then I'd finally take a right breath, and I'd walk 5 or 6 houses because a little physical exercise creates some mental clarity too, and some mental health as well.
For sure. So
I'd walk 5 or 6 houses around into their house, and so I think you've got to be willing to do it scared for as long as it takes until you can do it skilled.
Mm-hmm. That is a great quote. I love it.
Yeah.
What are some of your pet peeves?
I think some of my pet peeves is entrepreneurials or leadership people who've never really been on the journey, so they give a lot of things that aren't actually accurate. So one of my biggest pet peeves is when I hear somebody in leadership say, if you follow your passion, you'll never have to work another day in your life. That's such a bull crap thing. Because you're always going to have things you don't want to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That it's not lilies and butterflies just because it's your passion, right?
Right?
You have your purpose and your passion. You create a platform that serves your purpose and your passion. But there's going to be days where it just sucks.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a big pet peeve of mine when I hear that. Because I just know that anybody who's ever been through it knows that you're still working.
Yeah, you're
right?
still working for sure.
Even fishing stinks after a while for a little bit, and
I may have used that quote in one of my books, so I'm just full transparency. But I agree with you. It's like
you know what I mean, though. I'm not
totally,
and I understand what you mean by that if you've said it. So I'm just
no, it's all right. You're calling me out. no, but I 100%. Like I absolutely love what I do.
You bet.
And I am passionate about what I do. But guess what? There are days that I wake up and I'm like, you know what? I've got to do X, Y, and Z today, and I do not want to do it.
Totally.
I got to have this conversation with this person. Don't want to do it. This is going to be stressful. I've got to go to this board meeting. That's going to be. There's just days like it's not always sunshine, flowers, unicorns, rainbows. I mean, you got to sometimes just wade through the swamp and just get stuff done it sucks. And for me, as for an entrepreneur, I think that's one of the things that people who are tied to a desk in a 9-to-5 job, there's ways in which you can go into that job and somewhat hide out, punch the time clock, and waste some time. And you, as an entrepreneur, you can't do that.
No way. Yeah.
There is no off day. You've got to be on 24/7. You've got to be out there swinging.
Totally. And you're always doing what somebody else is scared to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? As a serial entrepreneur, you always find out the areas that everybody else is scared to do, and you've got to be the one that does it.
Yeah.
So it's not always like you said,
Rainbows and unicorns.
Rainbows and unicorns.
But for those, if you do it and you train yourself to do it, and so one of the things that I share with the staff, say, look, guys, the conversation that needs to be had or that you need to have with somebody, but you're afraid to do it, and it's the thing that is the most scary. That's the one you've got to go have right now. Get it off. It's almost like you're waking up in the morning and taking a look at your to-do list for the day and saying, okay, what's the thing that I don't want to do? Just knock it out. That way you don't have to worry about it. It's not dangling over your head for the rest of the day, and you're loathing it. So you just hit those problems head on. So I don't know. That's
you bet.
Some of the things that I try to focus in on my day. Any lifestyle hacks or entrepreneur hacks, things that you've learned along the way to help you on your journey?
I don't know if I have found any crazy amount of hacks. I have been thinking about a thing that's kind of a hack, but it's kind of not a hack, but it's a hack.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been watching all these things about Top Gun. The new Top Gun's coming out. Have you seen that?
I've watched the trailer like probably a dozen times.
I have too. I watch it, so that's one of the things on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
If I'm on there or whatever, and I go down in 2020, I think it's the summer of next year it's coming out. And I was thinking about, so this is 34 years down the road, and I'm just thinking about this at night, and that's when I do. So I read in the morning, I learn their information from the book, and I write and I think about it. And at night, if I'm watching something, I'm watching it, but a lot of times I'm just writing. And I'm just thinking about, I'm processing what they're saying and trying to formulate whether I agree with it, what my thoughts are on it. And sometimes I'll even think about it and I'll ask you a question about that, or I'll ask somebody else that I mentor with a question about that. But I got to thinking about 34 years later, why are we watching a movie 34 years later? And I think we're watching that movie 34 years later that we can't wait to watch. Like, I am so stinking excited. I hate movies, to be honest. I don't like movies. Like, I like Dumb and Dumber and Billy Madison, right? So
okay, you've told us all we need to know about
exactly about my thinking. But the reason why I want to watch it, and the reason why I think people want to watch it, is because Maverick re-engaged. And I don't know if you remember the end of that movie. Goose had died, and Maverick's got this new guy, and they're at this dog fight at the end, and they're fighting him, and Iceman, I believe, is his name, and he's in the middle of this, and I haven't watched the movie for 15 years. I'm just trying to recollect. But Iceman's going, and then Maverick's supposed to come in and help him out, and they're saying, where's Iceman at? So they called back in, and that bald guy that I think's back on the movie again, he's sitting there, and they're saying, is there anybody else that can go up there? And he said, we can't get anybody up there for 10 minutes.
It's going to be all over in 10 minutes.
It's going to be all over in 10 minutes. Remember that? And he says, so all of a sudden, Maverick takes off, and they're like...
He breaks away.
And they're like, Maverick, engage. And he sits there, and he drives off, and then he starts looking down at his dog tag with Goose on, and he starts processing the past. And he ends up using it to propel his future, and he re-engages. And I think the only hack I have is that when I disengage, I put things in my life that help me re-engage faster than the average person. And so that's why mentorship, I don't ever leave mentorship, because it force feeds a re-engagement. When I listen to audios or do books or even get with the team and I make commitments, set plans, those are force feeding the re-engagement. And I think really the world wants to see somebody re-engage, right? So I think that might be a hack.
I absolutely love it. It's probably a great way to close out, because life, just there's a natural atrophy in life.
You bet.
Right? Where if you're not putting fuel in the engine, if you're not engaging and you're just letting life happen, there's this natural atrophy where you'll just kind of slowly, you just lose that momentum. And so I love how you've phrased that, where you are figuring out trigger points to force yourself to re-engage on a daily basis. It's like you're jamming that fuel in that jet engine to keep it fired up.
You bet.
I love it.
Yeah.
Cody, it was awesome to spend some time with you tonight.
Me too.
It is about 12:30 here, 12:20. It's been a long day for me, a long day for you, but I did not want you flying out of here this weekend without me getting a chance to sit down, just kind of pick your brain, hear how you're thinking, hear how you process, get a little bit of your life story, out there for everyone to hear. It's been a huge encouragement for me, and I certainly hope it has been a huge encouragement. I know it's been a huge encouragement for those that are listening to the podcast. So I want you to come back on in the future, and let's do round two. I want to hear a little more about the bar fight, because I know that
there's more to it.
There's a lot more to it. Now we got to tease out some winning principles there. Good boxing here.
Yeah, make sure they're not looking. Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, that's the key thing. You got to land the first punch. That always helps. Totally. All right. Well, for those of you who are listening at home, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Leap. Our guest late this evening, and into the early hours of the morning, has been Cody Newton, here out of Wichita, Kansas, a serial entrepreneur, a person who said, you know what? I don't need this college degree. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to chart my own course. I'm going to do it myself. I've got great mentors, and I'm going to be self-taught. Has had massive success. Is a great friend of mine, someone that I learn from every single time I am around, and I certainly hope that you enjoyed this podcast. So for those of you who would like to have somebody on the show, if there's somebody that you'd like me to interview, don't feel afraid to send us an email, and we will do our best to get them on the show. And we look forward to hearing from you, and we will be in touch in the next podcast. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Taking the Leap podcast with your host, Bob Dickey. You can keep up with the latest on the podcast at www.takingtheleappodcast.com and bonvera.rocks. You can also find the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, or wherever fine podcasts are distributed. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Taking the Leap.